Grief is not the end of your story, it's the beginning of a new chapter. Welcome to the Empower Grief Journey podcast. I'm your host, Chris Mamone, and I'm the founder of the Empower Grief Journey coaching and podcast platform. This podcast is your dedicated space for healing and transformation. Each episode brings real conversations with people around the world who have navigated grief and discovered the strength to create new inspired beginnings. On today's episode, we're going to be talking with Megan Malick, who's the author, speaker, facilitator, and coach who helps people make space for grief personally and professionally. She's the founder of A New Path and author of A New Path, a practical workbook and planner for the first year of grief and settling your personal affairs. She integrates personal and practical tools, reflective writing, brain spotting, and grief informed practices to guide people through loss and clarity and compassion. Megan reminds us that change equals loss and loss equals grief, an essential part of every life stage. And when we honor it, growth becomes possible. So without further ado, I want to introduce you guys. Megan, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me. So good to be here.
Likewise, and I'm really glad we got to meet last month and we're finally able to connect. You definitely have a unique grief story that I'm excited for you to share with listeners. And I also loved your ability that when we honor grief, it allows us to grow. I absolutely love that. So I'd love for you to share
Oh,
more
thank
about
you.
yourself with our listeners today and a little bit about your story.
Yeah, it's funny. I have started to tell people like grief has been traveling with me. I mean, I think grief is really with many of us most of our lives, and my life just invited me to really befriend grief earlier maybe than some people would have from you know, we moved when I was in elementary school, and at the time I wouldn't have been able to say, "Oh, this is grief," but we were at a little small town. Everybody knew everybody. I played tag with the boys' school to a more affluent school, and I felt very out of place, very lost, very alone. It was grief. Um, I talk with clients about like what's your grief resume and like when did you start noticing losing things or people? And Chris, when we talked earlier, I said when I was 17, our family had a house fire and we lost everything. And that was also grief. Um, and kind of traveling through, I've dealt with infertility, divorce, all of that. So I could go more in depth into any of these, and anyone who wants to meet me is welcome to hear me. And so all of that led me to the whole change equals loss, loss equals grief throughout my life. I think to get to be who I was, that was part of like an equation that started to make sense to me. And each loss helped me grow and become, I believe, a more compassionate, more whole, more open-hearted, more curious, more comfortable with the kind of just the uniqueness that life is and like not quite what I was planning. But in 2022, this is what sort of led me down this new path, and that's become the grief story that people associate with me. My mother completely unexpectedly died. She was 72, and my father became terminally ill maybe not even a month after my mom had died. And he also was not ill at the beginning of 2022. He developed pneumonia about a month after mom died, 3 weeks. And so within a season, I went from having two parents and kind of, I'm living my life, doing my thing, juggling stepmotherhood and all of that to being thrust back in the oldest daughter role and then being the matriarch in our family. And I was 45. And I was not I knew what the feelings inside of me were. I knew that they were grief, and I wasn't scared of them in the way that I have heard people that I've worked with over the years and have worked with now be like, what's wrong with me? So thankfully, because I'd had my previous experiences, I wasn't scared of the grief. But I tell you what, I was awed by the power of it living in my body and how it just demanded of me to attend to it. It like was like, pay attention to me and listen to me. And um, so I started to listen in. What I tell people took me to my knees was all the paperwork and the things that I had to do to like settle my parents' affairs. And what shocked me most, um, I'm the oldest of, and I have two younger sisters. And I mean, we are by far not perfect sisters. But what my parents wanted was everything to be divided evenly between the three of us. What my sisters and I wanted was for everything to be divided evenly between the three of us. Like, we might have had some squabbling, but it wasn't like what you hear about where families are fighting about this or that. We just wanted it to be over. Like, by over, we wanted to be able to be with ourselves and our grief, not having to like file paperwork again and again. And I was surprised at a process that I thought would be like, hey, how is this even going to take this? Like, it's all on paper. We're not arguing about a thing. You have what you need. It took uh 2 years.
Wow, that's a long
Yeah,
time.
that is a long time.
Wow. So, Megan, I wanted to ask you about something you said about grief because I haven't quite heard somebody phrase it this way, but grief demanded your attention. And I thought that was
Yeah.
very eloquently said because a lot of people try to push grief out of the way and move forward without it and try to let go of it and get over it. And somehow I always say that grief finds a way to wiggle itself in there without your permission. And if you ignore it, it causes a lot of problems in life unintentionally.
Absolutely. And it's, Chris, it's really funny. Um, I mean, I wouldn't say I wanted to ignore it or push it aside. I felt like life, the world was like, I need to look like I have it all together for this stuff. And I found that I really needed to build space in to grieve, to mourn. I mean, what I was doing was sad. I mean, I was sad because of what had happened. But, what I talk about with people is, it's okay to grieve even when you're filling out the paperwork. And I mean, I was working to not cry when I was working with the different professionals, but there was a moment where I was doing stuff. It was about this time of year, actually, November, and I had gotten a message that I had to do this like urgent thing. And I was like, oh. And I like logged on to the portal for the accountant to do some taxi thing for the end of the year. And it like just hit me that like, oh my gosh, this is hard because like I'm making real that they're dead. Like it's not just that this is hard because this is paperwork and it's irritating. It's also hard because it's like this right here and like tears started flowing down my face and like they were plunking on my keyboard in these like almost pretty Hollywood style. Like they were really big tears. And I just the magnitude of what I was doing, there was something about allowing myself to like express the grief in the moment that it was there that was so healing and liberating. And from that time forward, when I'm able, I try to build that in. And I actually said this to a client, I think this week or was it last week, who was, apologizing to me for crying and apologizing about having the emotions come out. So I talk with people a lot about like, it's like, I mean, I don't want to force you to be any way. So if it's this uncomfortable for you, that's okay. But please know your everything is welcome with me. Whatever the feeling is that's coming out, all feelings are welcome with me. Crying, laughing, being a little angry. And I said, do you want to hear one of my stories? And they were like, yeah. I said, so we were moving some stuff. We had to get a storage unit for my parents' stuff. And I said, I'm moving some things. And I looked at my husband and I was like, oh, there's a grief burst. I'm going to cry. And like out came this like weepy thing. It was maybe 2 minutes long. And then I started laughing because I don't remember what was in the box, but it was like, why did we even keep this absurd stuff? Like, why did we not just like get rid of this. I don't even think this is donating. I think this is like a trash. But when everything was happening, we couldn't even see the forest through the trees. So within 5 minutes, I went from here's a grief burst, okay, like a weep coming out to like laughing hilariously.
That is a prime example of how grief works in the strangest ways. And it's not really a way you can put it in words to describe it very well, but it you can go from joy to grief and grief to joy simultaneously.
And like having both at this simultaneously up and down, both at the same time, gratitude and grief. I'm in one. And it's, I guess, what my grief journey throughout my life has taught me, but this most recent one in particular is like, if we just make space for grief, so much happens there, like growth, empowerment, becoming deeper as people, becoming, I mean, like, look at you, your podcast, your book, your everything. And I mean, I want to just say to anybody listening, this doesn't mean that we wish for what happened. Like, I would never wish for you to have lost your child, your child. I would never wish for my parents to have died unexpectedly fast, like, and there's a gift in the grief. It's like both are true.
I'm really glad you said that because, it's a thing in the lost parent community that I'm a part of. Every single one of us says we're part of a club we don't want to ever be part of. But becoming part of this club, we've connected with people who are so empathetic and so compassionate, and they really had their life flipped upside down so much that all that's left there is, in a lot of ways, gratitude and connection with those of us who've gone through those things. And I can say that, even talking to you who's gone through a house fire of all things, I've only talked to a handful of people that have gone through that and lost everything. And I mean everything, family pictures, all your clothes, all your memorabilia, everything gone. And you're literally left with just yourself.
Yes, and the clothing on your back and the question that everybody asks you, what did you take?
Yeah.
What did you grab?
Well, since you brought that up, Megan, what did you grab?
What did So you're gonna laugh, and people were like, "You grabbed that?" I was in 11th grade and I grabbed my backpack, but it wasn't even because I was going to grab my backpack. It was we had smoke starting to come out of the vents in our house, which felt pretty scary. So, like, I was preparing to go to school and I like tripped on my backpack. I picked it up so that I could like leave. I didn't even think like, oh, I'm bringing this. It was more like, how do I get my body out of this space as fast as possible?
I can't even, I'm kind of laughing about that because of all the things people would take out of a house fire, that's just interesting to take the backpack.
It was really funny. I got razzed pretty good at school for being like, you're kidding. You have your homework. And I was like, I know, I do. But it wasn't because I was like trying to have my homework. Although I think I remember telling my English teacher, like my paper, I didn't have that stuck in my backpack. Like it was set out like on the kitchen table. And I mean, it was gone. Our kitchen fell into the like it, the fire started in our basement and came up through the kitchen and whatever. So there was like a nada. So that paper is
Jeez.
gone.
You know what
Um,
you've described, Megan, about grief with the house fire and losing your parents is that grief, in a lot of ways, is the shedding of our old identity that we attach to. And it's stepping into this new version of ourselves that we haven't really met yet. And it's kind of this like, I kind of equate it to a first date to simplify it down in a way. And I know people are going to laugh at me for that, but it's really true. You're looking at this new version of yourself saying, who are you and what do you want to be and where do I go from here? And how am I going to be different from this? And it's a very confusing time period moving from the old self to the new self.
it really is. It's so disorienting. It's like a secondary loss is you, like me. And then like,
Yeah.
okay, wait a second, who am I now? And how do I function? And then all of my other relationships that are still here kind of go like a little bit like that too.
Yeah, I mean, when you lose a house fire, one of the one person I talked to that did have a house fire is a realtor I worked with, and I called her all panicked, and I was a little shocked because she said, "I'm fine, I have insurance, I can buy a new house," and I was like, "Well, that's nice." I said, "Do you care about stuff?" And she said, "Chris, I had 15 years worth of crap in my house that I was gonna have to go through, and the fire took care of that for me. So I'm very grateful in many ways. I'm sad I lost a lot of photos and stuff." But the other half of that was I don't have to clean out a very packed garage that looked like a hoarder thing. So I was sitting there going, okay, so there's loss attached to this, but there's also this gratitude going on at the same time,
Oh,
being
all
grateful certain things happen.
yes. And I guess I would also say, I mean, I was 17, so it shaped how I think in a way I am grateful for. It has shaped me in how I see and value things versus people.
Mm, now
And
that's
what
an
I mean
interesting
by
perspective,
that is like things can be replaced. People can't.
and that
And yeah,
I feel like that ties in so well with you going through the transition of losing your parents. I mean,
it it yeah,
that's a really big life change.
it really, really does. And I think that's partly why um, in grief work, often you talk about when you lose a person, the work is partly to redefine your relationship with them. Here's my kitten. This
Hi,
is
buddy.
Leo.
Hi,
He just
Leo.
had he just had surgery, so sorry about sorry, but he's very
For those of
crashing
you
this week.
guys who are not watching the podcast on YouTube, Leo's this gorgeous black kitty. He's got a cone on him, so I think he's going through something,
Yeah,
and we're trying to
he
keep him
is.
from himself.
That's exactly he is. And so I'm also giving him a little more leeway and space with me because he's going through something. Anyway, all this to
Well,
say, uh, yeah, it has, and the love and the relationship with the person that passed, it stays, it just gets redefined. Just like you're redefining yourself, your relationship gets redefined. So I miss the physical being of my parents, but I still feel like I have a relationship with them. I talk to them still.
I love that. And Megan, I just want to let you know, not to interrupt you, but Leo is welcome to be on the podcast. He's very much a part of the show, and I'd love for him to be a
Aw,
contributor. So,
thank you. Thank you.
yep. For you guys that are listening to this only on audio, please go to my YouTube channel and watch this. Leo's an awesome little showstopper here.
Yes,
You guys will
yes.
enjoy this. Megan, I love that you brought up that you still talk to your parents because in many ways, I thought I was a little crazy after I lost my grandfather to cancer, but I still talk to my grandpa. I still talk to my son. And I really find, by the way, I don't think people are crazy for that. I think that's a way of maintaining a relationship just in a different form. And I think it's something beautiful to celebrate, to be very honest. I tell people I coach that all the time. Talk to your loved ones because I don't think they ever really left. They're just here in different form.
I do the same thing, and I've done a couple additional grief trainings in my career. One I did before, but the other I did last year. And one of the things that Claire Bidwell Smith, advises is actually to have people either talk or letter write to their
Mm.
loved one. And something I've started to do too, and she says you can do this too, like you can allow them to like write back to you. And I I have an idea of who my parents were and what they would say. And also, I mean, I have to say sometimes when I do it, it feels like they kind of are writing through my hand.
That's really beautiful, Megan. If I can ask you when you write a letter to them, is it about anything specific that's going on in your life currently, or is it a lot of times reminiscing about a memory that might have surfaced in the moment?
Um, it might be both. Since I published my book last year, one of the things that comes with grief for many people, I call it after grief. I don't know what the actual term is, but like I'm grieving that they're not here for this thing, this big milestone. It's like I'm not like looking back and missing them there. I'm not thinking back to the big loss, but it's like I'm publishing a book. This is a place where I would want them to be and celebrating with me. And so the morning that the book published, I wrote them a letter and I imagined what they wrote back about like how they felt and where they would be and what they wished for me, and it felt really good.
I think that's absolutely beautiful. What did you imagine them saying to you when you published your book?
Um, I can hear my mother. I mean, she would just say how proud she was of me and how excited she is. And my dad would be like tickled. He was like, "Oh, that you're doing all of this and you're living your dream and I'm just so proud of how you've taken all of this and what you're doing with it." And my dad was a very creative entrepreneur, and so as I'm stepping out,
Mm.
he was writing to me about how um, proud he was that I was taking this leap. And this is going to make me cry. So he wrote my sisters and me an email Father's Day, like 2011, 2012, I don't know. And my dad liked to golf. And he talked about how good golfers have caddies and that it was Father's Day. And he felt like he should actually be celebrating the three of us because he was so proud of the women that we were, that we grew into be. And he said, um, basically, like we're getting to the stage in life where we get to be the golfers. And
Oh,
he said,
I love that.
and then he would be honored to be caddying for us
That's beautiful.
as long as we were open to it, like, because he would know like what club we would need and what hill. And so I envisioned my dad telling me that he's caddying for me.
That's absolutely beautiful, Megan. Thank you for sharing that with us today. I
Yeah,
think
thank you for listening.
that's the power, I think, in talking to our loved ones that have passed and writing letters like you talked about, is that those emotions, even the tears you're showing right now, those emotions, by the way, are connections and they're still there.
Yeah,
They don't go away.
that's how I feel as well. And like these to me are tears of connection and tears of love and tears of like there's like this bittersweetness that comes with grief. It's like really flavorful. And I think of grief tears being like when I'm where I am. These aren't the weeping, oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed. These are the like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful that I have the life that I had the relationships that I had, and that I'm still able to experience like that I can envision my dad saying that. Like nothing can take that from me.
No. That's that's what I think is so powerful about your story. And I love how your dad brought up that he should be celebrating you guys on Father's Day, because you don't I don't ever really hear that very often, but I love that perspective and being a caddy for you guys. I just
Yeah.
that was such a beautiful analogy. I'm a golfer, so I have a lot of respect for that's where I'm going with that.
Yeah. So that means so, I mean, and he, yeah, it was really meaningful. It was also meaningful because of like where each of us was. Like I was in my late 30s and my youngest sister was in her early 30s. So I think it was really this acknowledgement of like we're moving into this phase of life. And he was moving into another phase. And it's funny, I don't know that I appreciated that aspect of it until the grief aspect and going like, wow, how do we honor the passages of time in our relationships with people of like as we evolve, as we go from golfer to caddy, if you will.
Well, that's what I think is so powerful about grief is most people talk about I call it the ugly side of grief, where there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of, frustration, there's a lot of depression and hurt and pain and suffering. And that certainly is a part of grief, by the way. You can't escape it.
Oh,
I've watched, But
Yes.
I mean, but I sit there at the same time and say grief kind of morphs and evolves all the time. It's always like an ocean moving up and down and all around. And sometimes that really heaviness of grief actually subsides. And now it becomes back to what you were talking about is honoring and remembering our past. How do we carry this with us? And that was something that
Yes.
when I went through both my losses, I didn't have a lot of support, and that's why I have a podcast today, because I have people like you come on here and teach people how to move through grief. And to your point, I started asking myself at certain points in the grief journey when it was appropriate for me to, how do I honor this? How do I remember this person? How can I always keep this memory alive? How can I celebrate them? And my grief has evolved, and I wanted to ask you this question too, how your grief has evolved in that capacity, because all the work I do with my coaching, my podcast, my book that's coming out, all that stuff, sadly it's not for me, but it's to create a legacy of remembrance for those that I lost. And
Oh,
through
mhm.
that celebration, you find that way to move forward. What was that journey like for you when you lost your parents?
Oh, that's a good question. And so I guess I definitely want to honor and make space. There I had anger. I mean, I think I actually had in my body feeling of anger more than I'd ever had in my life. At not even like at a specific anything, just at the everything, the whole situation, but not like a person to exactly point at. And I remember feeling like just the heavy, like, oh my gosh, it's hard to move, and the disorientation and the brain fog and the like, okay, as so many people will tell you in grief, like 1 minute you feel like, okay, I kind of got this. I'm feeling okay. And then, nope, nope, I'm not. It really is like an ocean. And the early phase for me was very tsunami like many days. So I was doing a lot of learning to I would say, do you go under the wave? Do you float over the wave? Or do you let the wave rock you into the shore and just be like, I just gotta lay on the shore here for a minute and get a breath. Um, but as I worked things through, it became lighter and became, like I said, like it demanded my attention. And I wrote a poem that's actually getting published next month in a literary magazine. Um, about how like grief that it started in my body feeling like this thing that I hated and I raged at it and it felt heavy and like a burden. But then as I listened to it, I said that it became like a mother loving me, caring for me, and like helping me take care of myself, but also, honoring how much I loved because we don't grieve what we don't love.
That is a well said statement. I like that.
So if I look at it that way, then it's like, okay, I mean, how do I make space for grief in the midst of being the things that I need to do? And I say, now I'm all about like living my legacy. What does it mean to live my life to the fullest? How can I honor the gift that this life is? How can I share my wisdom with others so that maybe nothing can take grief away, but could they have a little less hard or lonely of a time in it?
That is well said. I like that. I think that
Um,
grief is one of those things that we go through, gives us very much hidden gifts and lessons and blessings that I talk about all the time. And they will show themselves to you in the moments, right? Funny story. So I can't tell you if that's going to happen in a week or a month or a year or 5 years. I can't tell you that. But what I can say is when it does, to what Megan's point is that maybe it gives us something of a gift that we can meet people where we once stood, where we were lost, where we were angry, where we were upset. And be a guiding light for that person in that moment where they might feel isolated and alone. And to that point, our grief doesn't have to have no purpose at that point. It has a big, big purpose beyond ourselves. And that's the point we can serve other people.
Huge. And I mean, losing is a part of living. I mean, we might not like that, but it's such a common denominator. And, Chris, we're living in a time where people are hurting and they're yelling at each other. And here's my griefy pie in the sky. Like, I see grief as a bridge to help bring people together. Like, I
I love
really
that.
do. because, I think about I was part of a parent and sibling loss grief group, and we were a very diverse group of humans. But there was something about that we were all grieving this loss of parent or sibling that united us. And like I still keep in touch with people. And you know, this is 2 years later, I'm still in touch with people.
That's beautiful.
And I mean, that's amazing. So
You
I
know,
guess
that's
that's my hope.
Well, what you pointed out there, which I think is important, and what's why I say grief is something to move through and move with in your life, is that when we go through a big loss like this, it is part of life. We're going to lose our parents one day. We're going to die ourselves one day. We might lose a home. We might lose a car. We'll lose a relationship. We'll lose a pet.
Hmm.
Loss is a part of life. And that's not to say, by the way, that we just accept that and get over it. That's missing the whole opportunity behind grief. But when we allow ourselves to sit with it and look at it like it's a person next to us and walk beside it, that's where there's so much to get from that moment. And we find that we have more in common than we do apart. That whole phrase hurt people has been rolling around a lot. And I say hurt people because they're not dealing with their grief. They're not willing to sit with the uncomfortable emotions. They're not willing to sit there and say, I'm hurt and here's why, or here's what I'm feeling, or this is what I felt like in this moment. And those people that are hurt, they need a space like this to process things. And it doesn't mean they're weak. It doesn't mean they're not a man. It doesn't mean any of those things. They just need to find time to get in touch with themselves and start to see that there's more to life than the cyclone of automatic stuff we have in our life. We always get up and go to work every day. We sit in traffic. We go to jobs we don't like. We wait in line at grocery store. We have this like automated thing in our life. Grief disrupts that. Grief kind of just throws a wrench in the system and blows it up.
Oh, grief is the great disruptor. And I guess I, you know, learning, and I'm not gonna lie, there are moments where I'm like, oh, are you like really? Like, I don't feel like sitting with you today. So I have that. And in general, when I make space for grief and listen, I'm so glad because I have actually found grief to take care of me, to teach me, to guide me, to all of these, like, might be disruptive, but it definitely wants my healing.
That was beautifully said about grief being a disruptor, right? Leads me to the question to ask you, what are some of the most profound things you've experienced while giving grief space in your life to make it feel seen and heard and understood? What's been the deepest way that that's changed you?
Um, I think like allowing myself to cry on your show and not apologizing for it, which might sound whatever, but it's like, oh, the grief is going to come up. Of course it's going to come up. This is going to be this. And that I trust enough now that like this is just part of the process. And I dream of a world where you acknowledge, oh, of course this is here, and I receive that, but I don't need to excuse or explain or suppress my grief. It's just part of the space. There it is. It was honored. It went. And I think that is how I've personally changed the most. Because I used to believe um, that I needed to like set it aside. Like I wouldn't not do it, but I would set it aside and I would do it by myself, or I would do it like with my therapist.
You,
And now I'm like, okay, I'm not burdening people. I'm not asking them to carry my weight for me. I'm letting them see the real feelings. And I want to build a culture where we allow ourselves to have real feelings.
I couldn't agree more with you about that because I think we're a culture and a society, especially in our country, that we don't allow space for it in many ways. And I love, by the way, that you said to be able to cry on the show today and not apologize. I'm glad you didn't because I would have told you you don't need to apologize. And I caught myself doing that because I go to therapy because I have a lot of hard issues with Caden, 3 years after the fact. And I'm just being raw and vulnerable to say, I'm a man, I cry too. I hate to tell everybody that, but it's the truth. But I caught myself apologizing to my therapist one day, telling him all this stuff that happened. And he said, "You don't need to apologize. That was your experience. And what do you have to apologize for?" And I sat there just like you explained today and said, you're right. Why am I running from that or why am I hiding that? And what if we're walking around apologizing for our lived experience when in reality that lived experience and grief could very well be the thing that helps somebody that we run into, a complete stranger that might be going through something similar. Maybe we're that guiding light when we break down, when we cry, when we get vulnerable, we get open enough, we get raw with ourselves. Maybe we give that person who is in that place the ability to say, wow, if they can do that, so can I, and become a source of strength for somebody else.
That I would say that's the other. I don't know that this is a change as much as like living into uh who I accepting this as true. So in my grief group, we would share and then um you were allowed to be in for 2 years post the loss. And then your last time, there would be kind of people would say nice, just say goodbye, all of that. And I mean, I just showed up me, real, raw, however I was. And so many people said that they found hope and inspiration through me and what I shared and how I talked about my my grief journey. And I thought, well, I was just being, I just said, I was like, well, I was just being me. And they were like, well, just you is a pretty, like, that's all you have to be.
I love that.
And it was like, okay, here I am. I'm a helping professional. So I think often we think we have to do so much to help. But like, talk about a physician heal thyself, so to speak. Like, that's ultimately what I have always tried to communicate is being you is exactly the gift to give the world. And then I was given that gift back.
See, that's what I think is beautiful about what you just said is I've had a lot of people think that because I'm a coach, I have all the answers. That's the furthest thing from me. I'll tell you that right now. And I love that you brought that up is being yourself is the best gift you can give to the world because what I try to share with everybody, there's 8 billion people on this planet. That is 8 billion different life journeys. That's 8 billion different experiences. Everybody's going to go through similar things in life to some extent, but it's going to be through a different journey and a different experience and a different lens. And when we can allow ourselves to be open enough, like the group that you just described, to say, well, Megan, you being you is exactly what I needed today. You showed me a light that I didn't have inside me. When we can have that perspective to see all these people as a learned experience, something to learn from, something to grow from, and maybe permission, by the way, to be vulnerable.
Mm,
I see so many men still with this tough, like, suck it up, be a man, don't cry thing. And I'm like, God, just stop it, please. Like, men can cry. It's okay. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're terrible. It doesn't mean you're soft. It doesn't mean any of those things. It means you're a human. And we're human beings have emotion. That's why we cry. That's why we feel. That's why grief is impactful to us. We're human beings. And
we
so,
are.
why don't we give ourselves more space to be ourselves?
Yeah, I don't know. I simply know it was awesome to receive that gift. I know I try to give it, but to go like, oh my gosh, now I'm getting, and I needed it too, because I need, I am far from having the all the answers, and it's way easier for me to coach you than it is for me to coach myself, so to speak. Like I can see your path way more clearly than my own sometimes.
Well, that's the thing, we my old college professor had a saying called the seeing person in the room full of blind people. And she said we can always see the things going on with other people, but it's very hard for us to look at ourselves and see it. And so that's why it's so important to have other people out there showing us, mirroring back what's going on or giving us a perspective or a lesson or a blessing. And I just want to point out really quickly, your grief gave you that gift, by the way, because if you hadn't gone through that and been in that grief group, you might
I
not have
wouldn't.
gotten that.
It's true. So I think of that as part of the grief growth gift. I mean, it's grief has gifted me tremendously.
And I call it the oxymoron of grief because there's this place of just heaviness at times, and then at the same time, you get to a place in your grief journey, like where I'm at with Caden, and I say, I didn't want to lose my son. That was the worst thing that ever happened to me. It was. But I can either sit there and say that this can be a very depressing, very traumatic event in my life, and I can be victim to circumstance, or I could choose to build a legacy and honor and remember and celebrate him in my life. And what a better way, by the way, to work down that honoring and remembrance track of going through grief because I'm out now able to serve lots of people in life because of this one moment. And I get to honor somebody in the same crossfire. And that's where we switch from that grief into gratitude. And that's where there's so much power behind grief.
It's I think you just said that so incredibly well because it honors the both and because it is. You wouldn't choose it. It's awful. It's painful. It hurts. It's ow. But it's also gives and opens all of this. So, I it's just it's a paradox. It is a complete oxymoron paradox. Um, yeah, yeah.
So Megan, I've loved having you on the show today. I feel like I need to bring you back for another episode so we can dive deeper. You're just
Yeah.
you're an enjoyment to talk to, and I think
Oh,
you have a beautiful experience through grief, is what I've seen from you
oh,
today.
oh, thank you, Chris. It's just such an honor to be here, and I'm so grateful for your work in the world. Thank you for all you do.
Well, as we wrap up the podcast, I did want to ask you about your book. I saw that you wrote that. I remember vaguely when we talked, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember you wrote a book. I think it was helping people through the end stages of losing a parent and going through estate planning and what to do in that moment of life. And I thought that was something, to be
Yeah.
very honest, most of us get taken by surprise, and it's like, oh, great, mom and dad pass, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh. I have to deal with a estate, a house, and taxes and money, all this stuff going on out of left field. Could you share with us a little bit about your book and what led you to write it?
Yeah. So, for the folks who are watching the YouTube, I'm holding it up so that you can see it. So it is a practical workbook and planner for the first year of grief and settling your person's affairs. And you can use it before, even well before, or during or after your loss. And because I'm a big believer in grief, the book actually starts with grief. Like introducing what is it, what happens to our bodies and our brains, how to ask for help. Um, I call the people that support us in our communities trees. So I don't know, Chris, if you have this experience or have worked with people, but like some people are really like task-oriented people. That's just who they are as people. So they might not be the person you call at like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night when you're like, I just am so sad about this. But boy, do you want them there if you like have to pack up stuff or, hey, I just can't even go into that room and look at the clothes, but we have to do that. So I call them oak trees. They're the taskers. They'll come and do stuff for you. Whereas a weeping willow will sit with you, call them anytime. You know, I'm not gonna, I can witness your grief all day long. And like a fruit tree is I'll take you out, get you out and enjoy, help distract you. Redwood can kind of dabble with all of it. So, who are the people there? And then who are the people professionally that guide you? And then I really tried to break down like what are the areas that you're going to have to be getting paper for, accounts, where do they go? What are they called? The number for Social Security, sample letters or scripts that you can use when you're talking to these people. Because I was like, I had no idea. Um, And then the writing of it actually started because my best friend from childhood, my husband's best friend from childhood, and our closest friend locally all had parents put on hospice within less than a year of my parents dying. And
Wow.
so I wasn't able to do the helping that I like traditionally I'm a like, hey, I'm here with you. I tend to redwood it. So like, what do you need? I can pivot back and forth. I might not be the person you want to project manage your move out, but like I know that needs to get done and I can help do that, or I can listen to you, or I can take you out for ice cream. But I had no capacity to do any of that. but I had this weird knowledge about like the paperwork that you might want to talk to your parent about. So I started to write. I created a Google Doc and I shared it with our friend and her sister. And they were like, this is really good. And then I shared it with another friend. And then one thing became another. And people were like, can I share this with this person? And I was like, yeah, go ahead. And the feedback was, this is good, expand, expand. And then I was like, oh, I think I'm going to take this into a book. And I finished it as a whole book. And I went through the publishing process. And here you have it.
That's really beautiful, and I love your analogy of the trees, by the way. I'm a big nature guy, and I love that. So,
Yeah, I'm a nature person myself. And I don't know. It also helped me realize the difference between like our friends and our family that support us, like trees have roots that send nutrients underground to other trees, and they're like in communities. And the people that we pay, our forest rangers, they guide us, but they're not like gonna feed us in the same way that like a tree would, if that makes any sense.
that definitely makes sense. And I always found that interesting. About a year ago, I didn't even think about this, but somebody was talking about trees and how when we look at a tree, there's a big stalk and then there's branches at the top of it with leaves and everything. And then underneath, there's a root system. And it's almost like a tree is like a mirrored image off the stalk, one up in the air and one beneath the ground. And I was always thinking about that and I was going, that's very fascinating. It's almost very balancing, symmetrical, so to
It
speak, where it
is.
can,
And yeah,
yeah, so.
yeah. It's just so cool, like reaching up and then reaching down and um, you know,
Yeah, well,
they're they're awesome.
I share your love of trees because my logo that I have up here is not just a meditating Zen person, but I got this idea about trees that every ring of life we have is a different part of our life. It's a different lesson we learn and experience we have. And our leaves are always growing and changing and falling off and growing back as we get older. And so.
Oh, oh, I love that. I love that.
So I try to remind people that, to Megan's point about trees in her book, where she talks about there's going to be people that are task oriented and they can do certain things. There's going to be a redwood person that can do everything. There's going to be one person that would be really good to listen. We have all those things within ourselves. Some are stronger than others. Some will come out in the forefront in situations where we'll be something else in another moment. But there's a lot of symbolism. Can't get my words together. Symbolism in nature between who we are as humans. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is beautiful. It is.
So, well, Megan, I want to ask you if people listen to this podcast and they want to connect with you, where can they find you?
So they can go to my website, a-new-path.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Megan Malick. You can find me on Facebook, Megan Marie Malick, or Instagram, although I'm less of an Instagrammer. I'm more of a Facebook and LinkedIn person. Full self-disclosure, it's not that I dislike Instagram, it's just, you know. And I have a Substack called The Accidental Matriarch, so you can find me there too. So
I love that. Well, for you guys listening today, I'll have all of Megan's social media links in the show notes. So when you guys get done listening to the episode, definitely go connect with her. I hope you guys had a lot of fun today listening to our conversation. For those of you guys that are doing this audio only, please go to YouTube because Leo was very much a part of this podcast, and I do feel
he
he
was.
contributed. So thank you for letting us meet Leo today too, Megan.
Oh, you are welcome. He is a joy.
He definitely is. I just loved it. He's walking back and forth while you're trying to talk, and then he's just like, I want some loves and some cuddles while we're talking about this, and then he just leaves.
Yep. Yep. All
So,
right.
well, thank you so much for being a guest on today. It was great to talk to you.
Thank you. You too. Thanks, Chris.
And I want to thank all of our listeners for joining Megan and I today on this episode of the Empower Grief Journey podcast. If this episode resonates with you, please share it with somebody you know who could benefit from Megan's story. For more episodes that are designed to empower you and support you, visit empowergriefjourney.com and subscribe to this podcast. You can find us on Apple and YouTube. For the Empower Grief Journey is all about honoring your journey, embracing your emotions, and finding strength in your own time. I want you to know that you're never alone on this journey, and together we can navigate grief with courage and compassion. Until next time, be kind to yourself and take your grief journey one step at a time.